Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the latest from a Tory group run by a Boris Johnson loyalist who have announced a grassroots movement in order to try and trip up the Conservative leadership. And it is likely that they are gearing up for a challenge, I would suppose, after next year's local elections. But they're getting to work right now. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So you look at this, it seems to be a sort of momentum for the Tories. A group set up to support one person as spiritual, if not actual, leader of the party. The group appears to be called the Conservative Democratic Organisation, and the press release claims to have aims of energising the grassroots in order to take democratic control of the Conservative Party back. And you read it and you think, hey up, trouble at mill here for Rishi Sunak. Of course, for all their talk of democracy, what they actually mean is they want to put Boris Johnson back in charge. There are three names of significance that are mentioned on the sort of press release that I saw, which I was alerted to initially by Sam Coates, who's a correspondent for Sky News. So there's Peter Cruddas, David Campbell-Bannerman, and Priti Patel. Now, it's not escaped notice that Cruddas, who was given a seat in the House of Lords by Boris Johnson after donating millions to the Tory party, is trying to involve himself in a movement that he claims is intended to improve democracy in the Conservative Party. The unelected Lord there. Cruddas ran an energetic campaign. You may or may not have heard of him, but he ran a very vocal campaign over the summer to try and change the terms of the leadership contest so that Boris Johnson could be included on the ballot to go into members. He's been fighting to reinstall Johnson as leader ever since the former Prime Minister announced his intention to resign. And I have said in the past, there is a possible window for a general election next year. It's not likely, but it is still possible. And what would trigger it is a collapse in the third Tory leadership of this Parliament. Most Tory MPs do not seem to want Boris Johnson back. If they wanted him back, they could easily get him back, because the party members, it is believed, would be in favour of that. But they don't want to. And they don't seem to think that anyone will realistically do better than Sunak for all his faults. You know, even if this group, this grassroots group, though, so they claim, were to persuade enough Tory MPs to submit letters of no confidence to the 1922 committee, nothing will happen. Nothing can possibly happen until the end of next October. Sunak is safe from a leadership challenge for a full year from the time of his becoming Tory leader. And you'll go, yeah, but wasn't that the same for Liz Truss? What happened there? Well, what happened there is the committee were prepared to change the rules because an overwhelming number of Tory MPs told them to. This is very unlikely to be the case for Sunak. You know, he doesn't have support of like the whole parliamentary party, but he seems to have the support of over half of them, which is all he needs. You know, and although the same cannot be said of members of his cabinet or even his wife, Sunak is not personally implicated in many scandals. He's also not insane like Liz Truss. So most Tory MPs, they want a sane, sober, discreet leader, and Sunak seems to be the best they're able to do. But his leadership will always be weak because he can't do what the leader of the Conservatives is fundamentally expected to do, win the election. That is priority number one for the leader of either the Conservatives or Labour. Their job is to form a government, ultimately. And Sunak has not demonstrated that he is likely to be able to do that. Now, it's true that Boris Johnson can't either, but you try telling his supporters that. They are convinced that he can rescue his public image and get the voters back on side. And they will reason that, well, Matt Hancock did all right and he's a bit creepy. Of course, Boris Johnson will knock it out of the park. So they can realistically, what are they going to realistically try and aim to achieve? So ultimately, the only way to actually bring Sunak down is to organise a rebellion inside the parliamentary party. If they can get a group, it has to be a fairly large group, to openly defy him, vote against his primary legislation, maybe even his budgets, then Sunak cannot govern. It's the same situation with Boris Johnson. Remember, Boris Johnson didn't step down in summer because he was upsetting Tory MPs. He stepped down because he couldn't govern. He literally couldn't govern. You know, so the public would see the government in free fall again, and these Johnson supporters imagine that Tory MPs would feel forced into letting the blonde buffoon back into number 10. In reality, I suspect they are more likely to just go for a 2023 general election. But that is the only way to bring Sunak down. Get MPs to block votes in Parliament. There's no other way. He's safe from a leadership challenge for the best part of another year. And even after that, all Sunak needs is a majority to support him. And he continues to be safe. Yes, it will look bad for Sunak to face a challenge, say next November, but he'll win it. So how can this group persuade about 40 or maybe 50 Tory MPs to openly block Sunak's legislation on a regular enough basis to bring his government down? Well, this press release seems to indicate that they're working directly on Conservative Party members rather than Tory MPs directly, persuading them that their party's been taken over. It's not actually untrue, but not quite in the way they say. They even refer to Rishi Sunak's government as being left-wing. They say his government's left-wing. Can you imagine that? Now, I'm not sure just how organised this group is. I'm sure there's plenty of money behind it. But I couldn't find a website. There is one, however. I saw it linked by their founder, the former MEP Bannerman, also Peter Cruddas. But when initially I saw the press release, I typed the name of the organisation into Google. It didn't come up in a Google search. So their SEO may need some work. I'm not sure having the backing of Priti Patel works too much in its favour. That's the third significant name being linked with the group. Ordinarily, you would say having such a prominent member of Boris Johnson's cabinet behind this initiative would give it some serious gravitas. But Patel doesn't appear to have much of a following amongst Tory MPs, which is why she's not in cabinet right now. Johnson made her Home Secretary for a particular purpose, not because she was seen as a senior member of the party. And looking at the Conservative Home polling from last June, which was the last month before Johnson announced he was stepping down, Patel seemed to be fairly low down there, so she didn't seem to be all that well regarded by members of the party either. So her involvement with this new group may be for her own ego rather than an actual boon to their chances, because she doesn't seem to have very much standing amongst any part of the Tory party. And it may well be that the individuals running this group, although they've clearly got a strategy, may actually not be tactically strong enough to achieve anything with it. Like I say, their ultimate aim has to be to get Tory MPs to openly defy Sunak. And the way they need to do this is to persuade those MPs that they would have the support of the party to do so. Because disloyalty goes down very badly in the Conservative Party. Often think in Labour it seems to be almost a virtue, but in the Conservative Party it goes down very badly. The only way you'd provoke a rebellion of sufficient size and resolve is to make those MPs feel safe in the knowledge that they will be seen by the wider party as defending their movement against a traitor in the leadership. And this is not a best guess on my part. You can see it writ large in the press release itself. They're pursuing all the conspiracy theory buttons. So look at some of these phrases from it. We need to empower party members. Steer its political direction back to the centre-right. Restore democracy in the party. The move comes after Tory MPs ousted grassroots favourite Boris Johnson. They overthrew his successor, Liz Truss, voted in by members and installed her defeated rival, Rishi Sunak, without bothering with a ballot of party members. Now, on that last quote, they seem to be conveniently forgetting that the reason there was no ballot was because Boris Johnson himself pulled out of it. But let's not disturb rabid lunatics when, for once, they're working against my political opponents instead of on my own side. Other phrases from it. It already has the support of prominent grassroots figures, which they can't name, by the way, and senior politicians, which they also can't name, by the way, including former ministers, who they can't name, by the way, who are angry at the left of centre position Rishi Sunak's tax-raising government has adopted. I particularly liked this one. Quote, Lord Cruddas said internal democracy of the Conservative Party is dying on its feet. Like I said earlier, this is the same Peter Cruddas who became an unelected Lord by agreeing to be Conservative Party Treasurer for a short while, donating in excess of £3 million to the party. Afterwards, along with a dozen others who did exactly the same thing, was rewarded with a seat in the House of Lords. For the man to bemoan the state of democracy where he basically bought himself a seat in Parliament, just means another irony meter exploded on me. But does it represent a serious challenge to Rishi Sunak? It looks like it. You look at this and go, way up, Sunak's in trouble. It's certainly an unhelpful distraction. But achieving their aim is actually going to be very difficult. You know, there's no mechanism for Tory party members to displace a leader and install a different one, even if the overwhelming majority wanted to. There's also no indication that the overwhelming majority do want to. I mean, for all the proud boasts on this website, remember, there's plenty of money behind it, but that money's been pumped in by a small number of people. You know, it's believed that more party members would have chosen Johnson than Sunak, sure, although it's impossible to know for certain because we do not know just how much Liz Truss's disastrous time in office maybe changed the attitudes of some party members. But if there was a real groundswell of opinion against Sunak, surely Tory party members would be communicating that forcefully to their Tory MPs during constituency meetings. We're not getting a sense of that from reports. And like I said, the only way for this campaign to actually trip Sunak up would be to persuade quite a few Tory MPs to actively and openly work against Sunak's legislative agenda. Behaviour that would be unwelcome in a party that generally understands the need for unity. So it's very difficult for me to see this working. That being said, it does represent the most serious challenge that Sunak faces. And if the local elections in May go very, very badly, they may be able to persuade others in the party that Sunak is not the best prospect after all. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships, and until next time, I'll see you later.